The first thing Kael remembered was the cage shaking. Not the sky. Not his mother's face. Not the green-black jungles of Vera where his kind once ruled beneath silver moons. Only iron. Iron bars trembling under impact while fire rained from above. He was small then. Barely old enough to hunt lizards beneath root systems. Barely old enough to understand why the trees were burning. The night his world ended, the stars did not shine. They opened. Ships descended through the clouds like metal predators, their bellies glowing red, their engines poisoning the rain. Kael remembered screams more than sights. The screams of elders. The screams of cubs. The screams of beasts larger than tanks dragged screaming into nets of blue electricity. The reptilians came with discipline, not rage. That was what made them worse. They did not slaughter for hatred. They harvested. One by one, panthers were sorted by size, muscle density, neural aggression, and obedience potential. The weak were discarded. The old were burned. The mothers fought hardest, so they were executed publicly. Kael never forgot that lesson. Not because he understood cruelty. Because he understood purpose. They wanted the cubs broken early. So he watched through electrified bars as his mother tore apart 3 reptilian soldiers before plasma rounds ripped through her spine. She collapsed facing him, bleeding into black mud, her golden eyes locked on his. She did not cry. She did not beg. She struck the cage one final time. And growled. Run. But there was nowhere to run. So Kael did the only thing left. He remembered. The transport ships smelled like blood, chemicals, and fear. Hundreds of cages lined endless cargo chambers, each filled with captured predators from conquered systems. Winged beasts. Bone-plated hunters. Razor-scaled crawlers. And panthers. The reptilians called them Carvane. Shadow fangs. Ideal war stock. Kael learned that while being shocked for refusing nutrient paste. The first year was pain. Every movement was measured. Every refusal punished. If he hissed, shock. If he clawed, shock. If he resisted commands, starvation. If he attacked another cub, reward. That was the system. Break loyalty. Reward violence. Shape instinct. They were not raising animals. They were manufacturing soldiers. Kael watched dozens fail. Some cubs went feral and were dragged screaming into disposal shafts. Some became obedient enough to survive, but their eyes changed. Empty. Hollow. Tamed. Kael survived differently. He learned. He learned the sound of boots before guards arrived. He learned feeding schedules. He learned pain cycles in shock floors. He learned which trainers enjoyed cruelty and which simply followed orders. Most importantly, he learned to lose on purpose. When ordered to fight, he fought just enough to survive. Never dominant enough to be feared. Never weak enough to be culled. Average. Invisible. It saved his life. By age 6, Kael had grown larger than most of his brood. His black fur had hardened into dark armored density beneath his skin. Purple scars crossed his spine from discipline lashes. His claws could cut steel mesh. But he kept his head low. The arena was where the real shaping began. A circular black pit surrounded by thousands of reptilian spectators. Commanders watched from elevated glass platforms while captured predators were thrown together to kill for behavioral analysis. Kael entered at age 7. His opponent was his brother. Not by blood perhaps. But by cage. By memory. By shared hunger. Hawaiian. Hawaiian charged because the shock collar forced him to. Kael dodged because instinct screamed louder than commands. Above them, reptilian crowds roared. Kill! Dominance test! Break the weak one! Kael saw the electrodes burning into Hawaiian's neck. Saw blood in his mouth. Saw terror beneath forced aggression. And for one dangerous second, Kael hesitated. That hesitation cost him an eye scar that stretched from brow to jaw. Pain taught him faster than mercy. He adapted. When Hawaiian lunged again, Kael shifted, slammed him into the arena wall, and pinned him hard enough to trigger submission sensors without killing him. The crowd hated restraint. They activated punishment. Electricity flooded the floor until both cubs convulsed. Kael learned his second great lesson that day. Winning was not enough. They demanded brutality. So next time, he performed it. He made his kills look savage. Quick enough to spare suffering. Violent enough to satisfy masters. And slowly, horrifyingly, Kael rose. Years passed in blood and observation. He became larger, smarter, deadlier. By adolescence, trainers used him as an example. This one learns. This one adapts. This one could lead war packs. But they misunderstood him. Kael was not adapting to serve. He was adapting to endure. Every scar became memory. Every order became data. Every arena death became a debt carved into bone. Then came General Vorik, Supreme Beastmaster of the Dominion frontier fleets. He did not visit often, but when he did, entire facilities changed. Guards stood straighter. Scientists silenced themselves. Trainers executed failures before inspection. Vorik was older than most reptilians, his scales scarred silver-black, one eye replaced by a crimson tactical lens. He watched Kael's arena match without emotion. Kael tore through 3 genetically enhanced war beasts in under 40 seconds. Not because he wanted to. Because one of them smelled like Varen cub. When the blood settled, Vorik finally spoke. This one remembers. No one understood what he meant. But Kael did. Because Vorik's red mechanical eye had not watched his claws. It had watched his pauses. His calculations. His choices. For the first time in years, Kael felt true danger. Not pain. Recognition. He was transferred that night. No more standard cages. No more public arenas. No more ordinary conditioning. He was taken below the primary fortress, beneath steel, beneath laboratories, beneath military doctrine, into Black Hole K9. The place where war beasts were no longer trained. They were weaponized. As the final blast door shut behind him, Kael saw rows of younger cubs in reinforced cells, frightened, angry, confused, just like he had once been. And for the first time since his mother died, Kael was not afraid for himself. He was afraid for what they wanted him to become. Because this time, they were not building a survivor. They were building a king. Black Hole K9 was not a prison. Prisons were built to contain. Black Hole was built to transform. The fortress stretched beneath the planetary crust like a buried machine god, layer after layer of steel corridors, combat arenas, surgical labs, neural conditioning chambers, and breeding sectors descending miles below the surface. Kael understood quickly that this was no ordinary military installation. It was a factory where living creatures were stripped apart and rebuilt into instruments. And at its center, something was wrong. The cubs arrived in waves. Dozens at first. Then hundreds. Panther cubs stolen from fractured tribes, shattered worlds, extinct moons, and forgotten jungles. Some were barely weaned. Some arrived wild enough to break their own teeth on containment bars. Some cried for mothers who would never come. Kael watched them all. Because General Vorik had given him a role. Trainer. At first, the title felt like mockery. He had survived their system, and now they wanted him to help perpetuate it. He was larger now, nearly full-grown, his body hardened by years of engineered combat. Scars webbed beneath black fur like maps of every lesson pain had taught him. The reptilians brought the cubs before him and expected brutality. Shape them. Break weakness. Create obedience. Kael did what survival had always taught him. He pretended. By day, he was exactly what they wanted. Ruthless. Efficient. Merciless enough to satisfy observers. He corrected hesitation with force. Punished recklessness. Taught combat formations, hunting angles, and coordinated takedowns. But even then, he watched. Because Black Hole had rhythms. Guard shifts. Nutrient cycles. Shock grid maintenance. Trainer rotations. And beneath all of it, patterns that did not fit. Some nights, entire wings went silent. Not sleeping silent. Vacant silent. Soldiers vanished below secured sectors that were not on tactical maps. Scientists disappeared for hours and returned pale, shaken, or euphoric. Machinery pulsed through the floors like a heartbeat too large for metal. Then came the chanting. The first time Kael heard it, He thought he was dreaming. Low. Rhythmic. Ancient. Not military. Not reptilian command language. Something older. He was returning cubs to their sleeping sectors when the sound rose through a ventilation shaft beneath his feet. A vibration more than a voice. It prickled beneath skin. Ancient instinct screamed. Predator. Not near. Below. For weeks he tracked it. He altered patrol timing, provoked disciplinary assignments, and manipulated trainer expectations until he found access routes beneath the fortress. Old maintenance ducts. Cooling shafts. Forgotten engineering veins too narrow for reptilians. Perfect for panthers. One cycle, during false rest hours, Kael slipped through a fractured vent behind Arena 3 and descended. Down. Further than any beast was meant to go. The deeper he moved, the stranger black hole became. Steel walls gave way to black stone. Mechanical hum became organic vibration. Temperature dropped, but not naturally. It felt like descending into something alive that disliked being observed. Then Kael saw the light. Green. Not electric green. Sick green. Pulsing through carved stone like infection beneath skin. He crawled to a narrow overlook and froze. Below him stretched a chamber so vast it made black hole's military architecture feel childish. A temple. Not symbolic. Functional. Cyclopean pillars carved with symbols that hurt to look at. A circular abyss in the center. Reptilian generals, scientists, engineers, and officers knelt in concentric rings wearing ceremonial black robes instead of armor. General Vorik stood among them. So did chief scientists. So did commanders Kael had seen execute thousands without hesitation. All kneeling. All chanting. At the center stood an altar. Not built. Grown. A mass of black crystal and living tissue fused together, pulsing like a diseased heart. Veins of green fire crawled through it. Above the altar floated weapons, tanks, ship schematics, advanced technologies forming from light and blood. Kael's breath stopped. He watched a reptilian prisoner dragged forward. Not an enemy soldier. One of their own. Bound. Screaming. The chanting intensified. The prisoner was thrown onto the altar. The black structure opened. Not metaphorically. It opened. Like something beneath reality had a mouth. Blood vanished into the living stone. The scream ended instantly. And in exchange, a new plasma core rose from the altar. Perfect. Advanced. Impossible. The chamber erupted in worship. Kael could not move. Every warship. Every weapon. Every shock collar. Every empire-shattering machine. Bought. Not engineered. Purchased with sacrifice. Suddenly his entire life rearranged itself. The conquest of worlds. The breeding pits. The endless wars. Not empire. Feeding. The reptilians were not supreme conquerors. They were middlemen. Distributors for something beneath the base. Kael retreated before instinct got him killed. Back through vents. Through steel. Through cages. But he was not the same creature who had entered. 4 days he trained cubs mechanically while his mind tore itself apart. He had believed the reptilians were monsters. He was wrong. Monsters killed because they desired power. The reptilians served power they did not own. And if their weapons came from sacrifice, then every cub in Blackhold was inventory. Not soldiers. Future payment. Kael returned twice more. Each time deeper. Each time worse. He found blood channels beneath laboratories. Missing cub records erased from databases. Failed subjects rerouted below instead of disposed. He found the true equation. Power equals blood. Technology equals flesh. Empire equals worship. And for the first time since childhood, Kael understood the scale of the cage. He was not trapped inside a military fortress. He was trapped inside a sacrificial machine wearing the skin of an empire. That night, back among sleeping cubs, Kael looked across rows of trembling young panthers curled together for warmth. They trusted him. Not because he was kind. Because he was still there. And as their breathing filled the cold chamber, Kael made the first decision that was truly his own. He would never let them reach that altar. Not one. Not even if he had to burn Blackhold from the inside out. Because now he knew what waited below. And beneath the empire, something hungry was preying too. The first cub died because it would not stop calling for its mother. It was not weakness. Kael knew that. Weakness was what the reptilians called any pain they could not weaponize. The cub was barely old enough to stand properly, its paws too large for its thin legs, its black fur still soft around the ears. It cried through the first night, then the second, then the third, pressing its small body against the cage bars until blood marked the floor. On the fourth day, a reptilian handler entered with a shock prod. Kael moved before thought. The handler never reached the cub. One moment, the reptilian was raising the prod. The next, Kael's claws were around his throat, lifting him off the floor until his armored boots scraped uselessly against steel. Every cub in the chamber froze. Even the guards at the door hesitated, rifles raised but uncertain. Kael could have killed him. He wanted to. Instead, he dropped the handler hard enough to crack the floor plating and stepped back before the rifles fired. The message was clear enough. The cubs were his responsibility now. General Vorik heard about it within the hour. He arrived without rage, which was always worse. His crimson mechanical eye scanned the frightened cubs, the injured handler, then Kael. A thin smile moved across his scaled mouth. Attachment, Vorik said. Useful if controlled. Fatal if not. Kael said nothing. Vorik walked past him toward the far end of the training wing. Then let us refine it. The guards forced Kael to follow. They led him into a section of black hold he had never been allowed to enter, past surgical suites and reinforced observation rooms, into a long chamber divided by a single wall of transparent alloy. Behind that glass stood a female panther. For 1 second, Kael forgot how to breathe. She was alive. Older than him by a few years, taller, scarred, and magnificent even in captivity. Her black fur carried streaks of silver along the shoulders. One ear was torn. Her left arm bore the burn marks of restraint cuffs. But her eyes were what struck him hardest. Golden. Unbroken. She stood in the center of the cell with chains hanging from the ceiling around her, not attached anymore, but left there as a warning. The floor beneath her claws was scarred by years of pacing. Kael stared. The female stared back. Neither spoke. Vorik stepped beside the glass. She was the last adult taken from your southern tribes. She killed 32 soldiers before capture. Broke 3 containment units. Refused breeding orders. Refused conditioning. Refused food until we learned what she would respond to. Kael's claws flexed. Vorik noticed. Careful, he said softly. She lives because I allow it. The female's gaze shifted from Vorik to Kael. No fear. No pleading. Only assessment. Who are you? Kael could feel the question without hearing it. Vorik gestured toward the cub sectors beyond the chamber. The young respond poorly without emotional structure. You will train them. She will calm them. Both of you will understand that obedience protects the other. There it was. The leash. Not metal. Not shock. Not command. Love. Vorik had found something sharper than any collar. Kael looked at the female again and understood the trap instantly. If he rebelled, she died. If she rebelled, the cubs suffered. If the cubs failed, both adults would be punished. Blackhold had not given him hope. It had given him hostages. That night, the cubs were moved into the training hall outside her glass cell. They were terrified of everything. The lights. The guards. The smell of disinfectant. The echo of boots. Some huddled in corners. Some scratched uselessly at doors. Some bared tiny teeth at shadows. Kael stood among them, unable to soothe them. He had been trained to fight. Not comfort. Then the female lowered herself behind the glass. The cubs noticed. One by one, their cries faded. She pressed her body against the transparent wall and released a low rumbling purr. It vibrated through the chamber, deep enough to enter bone. The sound was not soft in the way human lullabies were soft. It was ancient. Protective. A promise from a creature with claws. The cubs moved toward it. First 1. Then 5. Then all of them. They curled against the glass, tiny paws pressed to the barrier, trying to reach warmth that the wall refused to give. The female stayed there for hours, purring until the smallest cubs slept with their faces against her unreachable side. Kael watched from the darkness. Something inside him cracked. Not weakness. Memory. His own mother's final growl returned to him, not as pain this time, but as instruction. Run. He had misunderstood it all his life. She had not meant escape alone. She had meant survive long enough to carry the others. The next day, Kael began training differently. Publicly, he obeyed. He drilled the cubs in stance, movement, aggression, response commands. He barked orders loudly enough for reptilian observers to record compliance. He corrected mistakes. He made them look like soldiers being shaped. But whenever the guards turned away, his signals changed. A glance meant breathe. A claw tap meant wait. 2 fingers meant together. Low tail meant protect the smallest. The female saw everything through the glass. At first, she only watched. Then, on the 7th night, when Kael sat alone near the barrier after the cubs had fallen asleep, she came close. He did not look at her immediately. "I saw the temple," he whispered. The female's eyes sharpened. Kael kept his voice low. "Their power is not theirs. They buy it. With blood. With bodies. With us, eventually." Still she said nothing. So he told her all of it. The altar. The chanting. The sacrifices. The weapons born from screams. The missing cubs. The empire built around hunger. When he finished, silence filled the room. For a long time, she did not move. Kael rose slowly, ashamed of needing her to react, ashamed of wanting anything from someone trapped because of him. Then, just as he turned away, her voice came through the glass. Rough. Low. The first words he had ever heard from her. "How many cubs?" Kael stopped. "All of them," he said. Her golden eyes moved to the sleeping young pressed against the glass between them. Then she placed one scarred hand against the barrier. "Then we do not raise soldiers." Kael lifted his hand to meet hers on the other side. "No," he said. Her claws touched the glass opposite his. "We raise a pack." By day, Kael gave the reptilians exactly what they wanted to see. Rows of young panthers stood under white military lights, claws extended, back straight, eyes forward. Guards watched from elevated corners with rifles ready. Trainers recorded reaction speed, aggression markers, obedience rates, and pain tolerance. Every movement became data. Every growl became notation. Every mistake became punishment waiting to happen. So Kael made the cubs look obedient. He taught them how to strike on command, how to break formation when ordered, how to fall into attack lines that resembled Dominion military doctrine. He shouted when observers expected shouting. He struck the floor with his claws when the cubs hesitated. He forced them through repetition until the reptilian supervisors nodded with satisfaction. But that was only the surface. Beneath it, Kael was building something else. When he raised 2 fingers during public drills, the reptilians marked it as a formation command. The cubs knew it meant protect the one beside you. When he lowered his left shoulder before a strike, the observers recorded a posture correction. The cubs knew it meant move as one body. When he tapped his claw once against the floor, Dominion trainers saw impatience. The cubs knew it meant wait. Twice meant prepare. 3 times meant danger. At night, the true training began. The guards believed the cubs slept after exhaustion cycles. They believed shock grids, locked doors, and surveillance drones made rebellion impossible. They believed children trained under fear would only understand fear. That was their first mistake. Kael waited until the corridor lights dimmed and the patrol footsteps passed beyond the northern hatch. Then he moved through the sleeping chamber without sound, touching shoulders, ears, and paws. One by one, the cubs opened their eyes. No words. Words could be recorded. The pack learned in silence. They crawled beneath dead camera angles. They crossed the training floor without triggering pressure plates. They learned how to breathe through panic, how to fall without noise, how to hide strength behind clumsiness. Kael taught them not to move fast first. He taught them to move together first. Speed could come later. Trust had to come now. The smallest cub, Rika, struggled most. Her front paw had never healed properly after transport restraints crushed it. During public drills, Guards laughed when she stumbled. Reptilian trainers marked her for likely disposal if performance did not improve. At night, Kael placed her at the center of every formation. Not behind. Center. The others learned to move around her, shield her, compensate for her limp without making her feel carried. When she could not leap, 2 cubs boosted her. When she could not land cleanly, 3 adjusted formation before she touched ground. Slowly, the weakness the reptilians mocked became the first lesson the pack truly understood. No one gets left outside the circle. Behind the glass, the female watched every session. Kael still did not know her name. She never offered it. Maybe names had become too dangerous in Blackhold. Maybe she had buried hers with the tribe she lost. Maybe she understood that until the cubs were free, names were luxuries. But she helped. Not with words at first. With rhythm. On nights when the cubs panicked, she purred low through the glass, steadying their breathing. When Kael pushed them too hard, her claws scraped once against the transparent wall, and he eased the drill. When a cub froze under memory of shock punishment, she lowered herself to eye level and held their gaze until they moved again. She became the moon behind glass. Unreachable. Constant. Necessary. Weeks passed. The reports improved. Vorok's officers saw what Kael wanted them to see, young predators becoming disciplined assault assets. Aggression increased. Coordination improved. Fear responses decreased. Injury recovery accelerated. The program looked successful. Too successful. Kael knew it before the general arrived. The air changed. Guards cleaned bloodstains that had been ignored for months. Trainers reviewed files twice. Scientists checked neural restraint equipment. The cubs sensed the tension and became restless, tails low, ears angled toward every door. Then Vorok entered the training hall. His crimson mechanical eye swept across the formation. Behind him came commanders, behavioral analysts, and 2 temple priests in black robes pretending to be military advisors. Kael noticed them immediately. Their presence made the cubs' fur rise. Vorok smiled. Demonstrate. Kael gave the public signal. 4 cubs moved forward against 1 armored reptilian soldier. They attacked badly on purpose, at least badly enough to seem believable. 1 went high. 1 went low. 1 distracted. 1 hesitated just long enough to look young. The soldier fell. Not too fast. Not too clean. Acceptable. Vorok watched without blinking. Again. This time 6 cubs. Then 8. Then 12. Each group performed exactly at the edge of impressive but not impossible. Strong enough to prove progress. Flawed enough to hide truth. Kael felt sweat beneath his fur. Because hiding strength was harder than showing it. The cubs wanted to win. Really win. He could feel it in their muscles, in the way they restrained themselves before impact. They were no longer terrified infants. They were becoming hunters. And hunters hated pretending to limp. Vorok descended from the observation platform and walked among them. The cubs held formation, but Kael heard their breathing change. The general stopped in front of Rika. The smallest. The limping one. His mechanical eye focused on her damaged paw. This one is inefficient. Kael's claws pressed into his palms. She compensates in group structure, he said. Vorok looked at him. I did not ask for sentiment. She improves pack stability. That answer interested him. Vorok leaned closer to Rika. She did not lower her eyes. Kael silently begged her to. She refused. For 1 frozen moment, he thought the general would kill her just to measure the reaction. Instead, Vorok straightened. You are teaching them loyalty. Kael said nothing. Vorok's smile thinned. Dangerous. But useful if aimed correctly. He turned toward the glass cell. The female stood there, silent and still. Vorok saw the cubs glance at her. All of them. Just once. Enough. His smile returned. There it is. Kael felt the trap tighten. Vorok faced the room and spoke loudly enough for every cub to hear. You will have a deadline. In 30 cycles, these animals will be ready for deployment. If performance fails, weak units will be removed. If discipline fails, emotional anchors will be punished. His mechanical eye settled on the female behind glass. The cubs went completely still. Kael understood the message. Train them fast. Keep them obedient. Do not let them love too loudly. When Vorik left, the room remained silent for a long time. That night, Kael went to the glass. The female was already waiting. For the first time, she spoke before he did. How long? 30 cycles. Her golden eyes hardened. Then stop training them to survive the Empire. Kael looked back at the sleeping cubs. She placed one hand against the glass. Train them to outlive it. 30 cycles became a blade above every neck. Kael felt it in the training hall before the cubs did. The guards watched longer now. The scientists pulled more reports. The reptilian officers whispered from the upper platforms with the hungry patience of creatures waiting for a flaw. Vorik had not simply given a deadline. He had set a trap. If the cubs failed, he would kill them. If they succeeded too well, he would fear them. If they showed loyalty to Kael, he would tighten the leash. If they showed love for the female behind the glass, he would punish her to remind them where obedience came from. So Kael walked a line thinner than a claw's edge. By day, he trained them harder. Not crueler. Harder. He made them run assault formations until their legs trembled. He forced them through combat rotations against armored reptilian soldiers twice their size. He drilled them in obedience signals, battlefield movement, formation breaks, and staged aggression. Every report had to show improvement. Every observer had to believe the program was working. But not too well. That was the poison in it. A weapon that looked unfinished could survive inspection. A weapon that looked ready could be deployed, chained, or destroyed. At night, the real lessons sharpened. No more simple movement. No more crawling through blind spots. No more breathing drills. Now Kael taught them deception. How to miss without looking weak. How to fall without being beaten. How to take a hit in public and remember the opening for later. How to let enemies believe they were winning. The cubs hated that lesson most. Rika especially. She had grown stronger around her damaged paw, her body adapting with compact, vicious balance. In true night training, she moved like a knife in tall grass. Low. Silent. Unpredictable. But in daytime drills, Kael forced her to stumble sometimes. Forced her to look limited. Forced her to let reptilian soldiers laugh. One night she bared her teeth at him, shaking with humiliation. I can beat them. Kael crouched in front of her, keeping his voice below the range of the microphones he knew were buried in the ceiling. I know. Then let me. No. Her golden eyes burned. Why? He pointed toward the glass. The female watched from the other side, expression still but eyes heavy. Because if they fear what you are, they will hurt what you love. Rika looked at the glass. Her rage did not disappear. It matured. That was the difference Kael needed. Anger was easy to provoke. The reptilians had built an empire on provoking it. Discipline was harder. Discipline could wait. Discipline could remember. Discipline could become rebellion with teeth. The cubs began to understand. They started hiding their true strength better. A young male named Saw let a soldier shove him down in public, then later described every weakness in the soldier's stance. Two sisters pretended confusion during formation drills, then at night performed the same maneuver in complete silence with flawless timing. Even the smallest learned to weaponize underestimation. And behind the glass, the female became more than comfort. She became command. Her signals were nearly invisible. A slow blink meant too much attention. A claw curl meant guard rotation changed. A shift of her shoulder meant someone was listening. She had spent years caged in one room, but she knew every reflection in the glass, every echo in the hall, every habit of every reptilian who thought prisoners stopped observing once they were trapped. Kael realized something important. He was not leading alone anymore. For the first time, he and the female were planning in the same direction. That made him stronger. It also made him afraid. Because Vorik noticed patterns the way predators noticed blood. On the 17th cycle, the general came without announcement. No honor guard. No platform inspection. No warning. He entered during night hours. The true training was already underway. Kael saw the door light change one heartbeat before it opened. He gave the signal. 3 claw taps. Danger. The pack collapsed into sleep so fast it looked unnatural. Too fast. Kael knew it immediately. The room became still, but not convincingly messy. Cubs lay curled in sleeping clusters, breath controlled, tails tucked. Too disciplined. Too coordinated. Too ready. Vorik stepped inside. His crimson mechanical eyes scanned the hall. Kael stood alone near the center, body blocking the chalk marks scratched into the floor from the night drill. The female lowered herself behind the glass as if resting, but her eyes stayed open. Vorik walked slowly. Past sleeping cubs. Past claw marks. Past hidden formation lines nearly erased by Kael's feet. He stopped beside Rika. She did not move. His boot pressed down beside her damaged paw. Not on it. Beside it. A threat disguised as accident. Kael's muscles locked. Vorik smiled without looking at him. They sleep like soldiers. Kael kept his voice flat. They train like soldiers. No, Vorik said. Soldiers collapse. Animals twitch. Children whimper. His mechanical eye turned toward Kael. These ones wait. The silence that followed was almost worse than discovery. Vorik moved toward the glass. The female remained still. He raised one claw and tapped lightly against the barrier. The sound echoed through the hall. Every cub stayed asleep. Every cub heard it. Emotional anchors are effective, Vorik said. But dangerous when they anchor loyalty away from command. Kael said nothing. Vorik turned back to him. Your deadline remains. But monitoring increases tonight. Kael's stomach sank. Neural telemetry. Sleep pattern tracking. Chip response analysis. If there is hidden training, I will see it inside your brain before I see it in this room. He stepped closer. Remember who made you. Kael met his gaze. Vorik's smile vanished. And remember who can unmake everything you protect. When the general left, no one moved for a long time. Only after the corridor fell silent did the cubs slowly open their eyes. Fear had returned to some of them. Not childish fear. Adult fear. The kind that understood consequences. Later, in the medical wing, the reptilian technician Beaker adjusted the access port behind Kael's skull. She was smaller than the others, pale-scaled, quiet, with eyes that never stayed cold long enough to belong in Blackhold. The general ordered increased chip monitoring, she whispered. Kael stared forward. Can you block it? Once. Maybe twice. Not forever. Why tell me? Her hands paused. Then she said, because I became a doctor to keep living things alive. Kael looked at her reflection in the metal wall. For the first time, he saw not an enemy, but a crack inside the Empire. And cracks were where escape began. Time did not soften the cubs. It sharpened them. The frightened children who once cried against the glass became silent shadows moving beneath Blackhold's lights. Their bodies lengthened, thickened, hardened. Soft paws became killing instruments. Nervous eyes became hunter eyes. The same cubs who once flinched at every reptilian bootstep now watched guards with quiet calculation, memorizing weight, rhythm, weakness, and fear. Kael saw the change before the reptilians did. That was the point. By day, the young panthers still performed the Empire's version of obedience. They marched in formation, responded to command tones, struck targets, and followed battlefield drills designed by creatures who believed discipline meant control. They growled when expected. They submitted when expected. They made mistakes when mistakes were necessary. But at night, they became what they truly were. A pack. Not soldiers. Not weapons. A living organism made of hundreds of bodies and one shared instinct. They moved through the training hall in complete darkness, guided by breath, scent, vibration, and the smallest shifts of air. No spoken orders. No electronic signals. No command channels the reptilians could intercept. Kael could lift one claw, lower one ear, shift his weight by a finger's width, and the entire room would change shape around him. Rika became the first true proof. The damaged paw that once marked her for disposal became her advantage. She moved lower than the others, faster through blind angles, harder to predict. Reptilian trainers still underestimated her because she let them. In official reports, she remained impaired but useful in group formations. In truth, she could dismantle an armored soldier before he fully understood she had moved. Saw became strength. The sisters became speed. The smallest became scouts. The quiet ones became ambush. The angry ones became walls. Kael did not force them into one shape. That was what the Empire did. He studied what each panther already was, then taught the pack to make that difference useful. The female behind the glass watched them grow. Years had not freed her, but they had not broken her either. The cubs no longer pressed against the barrier crying for comfort. Now they approached it before hard trials, before punishments, before inspections. They stood near her glass for a breath, received her steady gaze, and returned to formation stronger than before. They called her mother when no reptilian could hear. They called Kael father. The first time it happened, he nearly ordered them never to say it again. Not because he hated it. Because he wanted it too much. The word was dangerous. It gave shape to the thing Blackhold had failed to destroy. Family. Belonging. A reason to live beyond survival. A reason to kill beyond rage. The reptilians believed they were raising military assets. They were raising sons and daughters who remembered every chain. Then came the first adult combat evaluation. Vorik filled the arena with 20 elite reptilian soldiers. Not handlers. Not trainers. Real soldiers from frontier campaigns, armored in black scale plating, armed with shock spears, pulse shields, and pain compliance devices. Kael stood with 12 panthers at the arena gate. Only 12. Vorik watched from above. Show me they are ready. Kael understood the test. Too weak, and some would be executed. Too strong, and all would be feared. So he made the first round ugly. The panthers stumbled just enough. Took hits they could have avoided. Let soldiers think their equipment mattered. One panther went down under a shock spear and stayed down 3 seconds longer than necessary. The reptilian observers relaxed. That was when Kael gave the real signal. Barely visible. A slow closing of his left fist. The arena changed. 12 panthers moved as one. Not fast. Inevitable. A shield bearer turned toward Rika because she appeared injured. She dropped beneath his weapon, hooked his ankle, and twisted him into Saw's path. Saw hit like a falling gate, crushing armor inward. The sisters split left and right, severing spear lines before the soldiers could form ranks. Scouts vanished behind larger bodies and reappeared at exposed joints. Within 14 seconds, 20 elite soldiers were on the ground. Alive. But humiliated. The arena was silent. Kael did not let the panthers roar. He lowered his hand. They returned to formation. Controlled. Still. Obedient. That frightened the reptilians more than savagery would have. Vorik's mechanical eye glowed brighter from the observation deck. Kael knew he had shown too much. But not showing enough would have killed them. That was the balance he had lived inside for years. After the evaluation, reptilian soldiers stopped laughing in corridors. They stepped aside when panther units passed. Some pretended it was discipline. Others could not hide the smell of fear. The cubs smelled it too. Kael had to warn them. Do not enjoy it openly. Saw's ears tilted. Why? Because fear makes rulers cruel. Rika looked toward the glass cell. Then when do we stop pretending? Kael followed her gaze. The female stood behind the barrier, one hand resting against it, watching him with the same question. He had no answer. Not yet. That night, he went to her alone. 4 years, they had spoken through glass in fragments. Strategy. Warnings. Names of cubs. Guard rotations. Pain turned into plans. But this silence was different. Hundreds of adult panthers slept behind him. Not helpless. Ready. The Empire had wanted an army. Kael had built one. The female placed her hand against the glass. Kael raised his to meet it. We could take Blackhold, she said. Yes. Then why haven't we? Kael closed his eyes. Because her cell was wired to temple systems. Because his chip still lived inside his skull. Because Vorik held the switch. Because every rebellion that began too early became another sacrifice below. He opened his eyes and said the only truth that mattered. Because while you are behind this glass, my claws are not mine. She did not argue. She only leaned her forehead against the barrier. Kael did the same from the other side. 2 panthers. 1 pack. 1 war waiting for permission to begin. The order came at dawn. Not through shouted command. Not through alarm sirens. Not through the usual metallic voice of Blackhold's internal system. It came through silence. Every training hall locked at once. Every corridor checkpoint doubled its guards. Every observation platform filled with officers. The air recyclers shifted to combat filtration. Armory doors opened deep beneath the fortress, and the smell of charged weapons spread through the lower levels like a storm before rain. Kael knew before anyone told him. Deployment. The Empire was done growing its weapon. Now it wanted to use it. Hundreds of adult panthers stood in the central hall under rows of white lights, armored reptilian soldiers surrounding them from every side. The pack did not move. They did not whisper. They did not bare teeth. That restraint was what made them terrifying. They had learned too well. General Vorik entered from the upper gate with commanders behind him and temple priests in black robes walking silently at his flanks. His crimson mechanical eye scanned the formation, lingering on Kael, then on the glass cell where the female watched from behind the barrier. Today, Vorik said, you become useful. No panther reacted. That pleased him. Or perhaps it disturbed him. Kael could never tell anymore. Vorik descended the ramp slowly, enjoying the weight of every step. In 10 cycles, this facility will empty. You will march under Dominion command. You will wear Dominion armor. You will break an enemy that has resisted us longer than any civilization in recorded history. A ripple moved through the pack. Not visible to reptilians. But Kael felt it. Enemy. Not prison guards. Not trainers. Not Blackhold. Something outside. Something dangerous enough that the Empire needed them all. Vorik smiled. Before deployment, every asset receives final control integration. Kael's blood turned cold. Doors opened along the medical wing. Technicians rolled in neural implantation units. The pack smelled the metal before they saw the needles. Kael gave one tiny signal. Still. No one moved. Inside, every instinct in him screamed to attack. But the female remained behind glass. His own chip remained rooted beneath his skull. Vorik's hand rested near the command device at his belt. The temple priests watched with patient hunger, as if hoping the panthers would resist and become an offering before deployment. So Kael did nothing. One by one, the panthers were taken into the laboratory. Rika first. Then Saw. Then the sisters. Then the scouts. Kael stood in the hall while his children disappeared behind surgical doors and returned with fresh glowing marks at the base of their skulls. He wanted to kill every technician. He wanted to tear the facility open. He wanted to break the glass and carry the female out through the fire. Instead, he watched. Because a rebellion triggered by rage was exactly what Vorik had prepared for. When the last unit returned, the pack stood marked. Hundreds of green control lights pulsed beneath black fur. Vorik looked satisfied. Now, he said, they belong completely. Kael lowered his head so the general would not see his eyes. Later, during his own chip maintenance, Kael was taken to the smaller medical chamber where Beaker waited alone. The pale-scaled technician looked worse than before. Exhaustion hollowed the space beneath her eyes. Her hands moved with professional steadiness, but her scent carried fear so sharp Kael tasted it. She sealed the door. Then she lowered her voice. They are clean. Kael did not move. What? The chips. The ones I installed today. Her fingers worked at the access port behind his skull as if this were routine maintenance. They are dead. Kael's breath stopped. Beaker kept talking quickly. The shells are real. The telemetry is real. The system sees them. The general sees them. But there is no command relay, no neural hook, no pain response, no obedience circuit. Kael stared at the reflection of her face in the steel wall. You disabled hundreds of Dominion control chips. I installed corpses and taught the system to count them as living. The words moved through him like heat after years of cold. Rika was free. Saw was free. The sisters were free. The scouts were free. His pack had walked into the medical wing as property and walked out wearing empty chains. For one impossible second, Kael almost smiled. Then Beaker's hand stopped. But yours is different. The heat died. Kael already knew before she said it. Older, he whispered. Yes. Deep integrated. Grown into the nerve web. It was implanted when you were still developing. Your tissue formed around it. Your pain receptors, motor pathways, aggression centers, all threaded through the control spine. Can you remove it? Not here. Can you kill it? Her silence answered first. Then she said, not without killing you, or leaving you unable to move. Kael closed his eyes. The pack was free. He was not. The old leash still lived inside his skull, waiting for Vorok's thumb. Beaker resumed working, but her voice changed. Softer. Heavier. I tried. Why? Her fingers paused again. For the first time, she did not answer like a technician. She answered like someone who had been carrying shame too long. I was born under the Dominion. I was told obedience was survival. I studied medicine because I wanted to heal living things, but every skill I learned became another tool for control. Her voice trembled once, then hardened. I have watched children become weapons. I have signed reports for bodies sent below. I have pretended not to know where they went. Kael said nothing. Beaker looked at his reflection. I never went to the temple, she whispered. I never knelt. I never offered blood. But I also never stopped it. The chamber hummed around them. Beyond the door, Blackhold prepared for war. Beaker finished sealing the access port. Dead chips are the only clean thing I have done in my life. Kael turned slowly. If Vorok discovers this, he will execute you. Yes. You should run. She gave a small, broken laugh. From Blackhold. Neither of them smiled. Then she leaned close, pretending to inspect the port one last time. When deployment begins, your pack will believe the chips control them. Let Vorok believe it too. The first moment his attention breaks, they are yours. Kael held her gaze. And me? Beaker looked at the scarred place behind his skull. You are still his. The words should have crushed him. Instead, they clarified everything. A pack with no chains. A father with one. A general who believed he held every leash. A doctor hidden inside the enemy. A female still behind glass. And 10 cycles before the Empire marched them into a war dangerous enough to require monsters. That night, Kael stood before the glass and told her everything. The female listened without interruption. When he finished, she placed her scarred hand against the barrier. The children are free, she said. Yes. And you are not. Kael pressed his hand opposite hers. Not yet. Her golden eyes darkened with understanding. For the first time, she looked afraid. Not for herself. For him. Kael looked past her reflection toward the sleeping pack. Hundreds of warriors. Hundreds of dead chips. Hundreds of children who could finally choose. And deep inside his skull, the last chain tightened like it knew its days were numbered. 10 cycles passed like a countdown carved into bone. Blackhold did not sleep during those final days. The entire fortress transformed from prison to launch engine. Hangars opened beneath the mountain. War machines rose from underground vaults. Reptilian soldiers marched in endless columns, their armor polished, their rifles charged, their faces empty with obedience. Kael watched it all from the center of his pack. Hundreds of panthers stood in Dominion armor, black plates fitted over their shoulders, chests, and forearms. The enemy's symbol burned on every breastplate. The same empire that had stolen them, starved them, shocked them, and trained them now dressed them as its proudest weapon. The insult was deliberate. The pack understood. None reacted. That discipline alone would have terrified a wiser master. Vorok walked before them with open satisfaction. His crimson eye moved from warrior to warrior, reading the green telemetry marks at the base of their skulls. Hundreds of control lights. Hundreds of dead chains. Hundreds of lies Beaker had buried beneath Dominion confidence. Only Kael's chip still answered. Only Kael still belonged to the button at Vorok's belt. The female was brought in a reinforced transport cage with wide armored windows. Not freed. Not touched. Visible. Her presence was not mercy. It was command infrastructure. Vorok wanted every panther to see what obedience protected. Kael met her eyes through the glass as the army began boarding. She did not look afraid. That helped him pretend the same. Beaker boarded with the medical support division, hidden among reptilian technicians beside the control monitors. She did not glance at Kael. She did not need to. He knew where she was. She knew where he would be. The ships rose before dawn. For the first time in Kael's life, black hole fell away beneath him. He stood at a narrow viewing slit while the planet shrank into darkness. The world that had been his cage became a gray sphere below, scarred with bases, mines, and military wounds. He felt nothing for it. No grief. No nostalgia. Only the brutal awareness that everything he loved traveled inside the same fleet as the creatures he hated. No one knew the target. That was the first warning. Reptilian commanders loved conquest speeches. They loved naming enemies before crushing them. They loved feeding soldiers a story big enough to make obedience feel like destiny. This time, they said nothing. The fleet crossed deep space in silence. Then the destination appeared. Blue. Green. White clouded. Alive. The panthers gathered near the viewing ports without orders. Some had never seen an unscarred world. Some had never seen oceans. Some pressed their hands against the glass as if the colors were a trick. Kael felt something twist inside his chest. The planet looked nothing like Black Hole's world. It looked protected. Vorok entered behind him. Beautiful, isn't it? Kael did not answer. Earth, Vorok said. A useful planet. Primitive on the surface. Valuable beneath. The name meant nothing to Kael then. It would later. The ships activated optical cloaking before descent. The fleet became invisible to the blue world below, sliding through cloud layers while cities glittered beneath them. Kael saw roads like silver veins. Settlements glowing in the night. Aircraft moving in patterns. Billions of lives unaware that an empire had arrived above them. Then the fleet turned south. Ice swallowed the view. White, endless, ancient. They descended over a military installation buried inside the Antarctic wasteland. Human soldiers moved along the perimeter, armed and organized, but not surprised. They did not aim at the reptilian ships. They cleared landing zones. Kael's eyes narrowed. They serve you. Vorok smiled. Their leaders serve us. Most of the species has no idea. That is the elegance of humans. Divide the rulers, and the masses police themselves. He pointed toward the human outposts below. Wars. Borders. Hatreds. Ideologies. We cultivated them for generations. Humanity believes it fights itself. In truth, conflict feeds what we worship and keeps attention away from this continent. Kael understood. The temple beneath Blackhold was not local. The hunger reached worlds. The reptilians had not merely enslaved panthers. They had farmed civilizations. The fleet landed on ice. The doors opened into air so cold it burned the lungs. Hundreds of thousands of reptilian soldiers disembarked. Tanks, artillery walkers, armored crawlers, command vehicles. Then the panthers descended in their own formation, silent and massive beneath enemy armor. The females' transport rolled behind them. The leash moved with the army. Hours passed as they marched across the ice. Human bases vanished behind them. The landscape grew stranger. Older. The snow hardened into blue glass beneath their feet. The air became heavy, not with weather, but with warning. Then the wall appeared. It rose from the horizon like the edge of the world. A vertical curtain of impossible ice vanishing into clouds, too smooth to be natural, too vast to be built, alive with faint inner light. The entire army stopped beneath it, suddenly small. Kael felt every panther react at once. Ears lifted. Claws flexed. Breath changed. Not fear. Recognition. Something beyond the wall called to their blood. Old. Feline. Vast. Kael did not understand it, but his body did. There were others beyond that barrier. Many. Vorik led him closer with 2 soldiers. At the base of the wall, one reptilian was shoved forward as demonstration. He struck the surface and vanished into white dust before he could scream. Vorik watched calmly. This wall kills us before we cross. Behind it lives an ancient guardian empire. Felinard. Powerful. Bound to this planet. As long as they stand, the wall stands. As long as the wall stands, Earth cannot be fully harvested. Kael looked back at his pack. Vorik's smile widened. You will weaken them for us. Kael understood the final betrayal. The Panthers were not invasion soldiers. They were disposable blood sent against a civilization strong enough to stop gods. Behind him, the female watched from her transport cage. Beside the command vehicles, Beaker stood among the technicians. In front of him, the wall breathed cold light. And for the first time, Kael realized the Empire had brought him to the exact place where slavery could end. Not safely. Not cleanly. But finally. Kael stood before the living wall and understood that Vorik had never planned for the Panthers to return. Not truly. The general spoke of strategy, weakening the Guardians, breaking resistance, opening the continent for harvest. But Kael could hear what lived beneath the words. Disposal. Sacrifice. Acceptable loss. Hundreds of Panthers thrown across a barrier into the claws of an ancient civilization they had never chosen to fight. The Empire had raised them as weapons. Now it meant to spend them like ammunition. Behind Kael, his pack waited in perfect formation. Hundreds of warriors in Dominion armor, silent beneath the pale Antarctic sky. They trusted him. That trust hurt more than any shock collar ever had. Across the ice, the female's transport cage sat surrounded by reptilian soldiers. Rifles pointed casually toward its armored windows. Not enough to look like panic. Enough to remind him. Vorik followed his gaze and smiled. You understand the arrangement. Kael did not answer. If your pack refuses, she dies. If you refuse, your chip drops you before you finish your first step. If they cross, they serve their purpose. Kael looked toward the wall again. The surface pulsed with dim white-blue light. Cold rolled from it in waves, but beneath the cold was that strange pull, that ancient feline recognition buried deeper than language. His pack felt it too. He could sense their confusion behind him, the way their instincts leaned forward while their minds waited for command. Vorik stepped closer. You were built for this, Kael. No. That was the lie he had spent his entire life surviving. He had not been built. He had been stolen. Broken. Sharpened. But never owned. Kael turned slightly, just enough to see the pack from the corner of his eye. Rika stood near the front, balanced low on her damaged paw. Saw beside her. The sisters behind him. Scouts spread across both flanks. The cubs who had once cried against glass were now warriors waiting for their father's signal. He could not save them by attacking here. Not yet. The reptilian army surrounded them. The female was under guns. Vorik held the control device. Kael's chip still lived in his skull. If he rebelled one heartbeat too early, everyone he loved would die on this side of the wall. So he made the only choice left. He raised his claw. Not the Dominion attack signal. Theirs. The first signal. The one he had taught them when they were too small to fight and too frightened to sleep. Together. Every panther saw it. Every panther understood. Vorik did not. Begin assault, the general ordered. Kael lowered his claw toward the wall. The pack moved. Not as soldiers charging to die. As children finally leaving the cage. They crossed the curtain of ice in silence, one formation after another, vanishing into white light. Rika looked back once. Kael did not let his face change. If she saw grief, she might stop. So he gave her the second signal. Live. She crossed. Saw crossed. The sisters crossed. The scouts crossed. Hundreds of panthers disappeared beyond the wall. And Kael stayed behind. Vorik noticed too late. His smile faded. Why are you still here? Kael turned to face him. For the first time since childhood, he let the hate show. Vorik's mechanical eye narrowed. If you did not cross, you do not intend to lead the attack. Kael said nothing. If you do not lead the attack, you do not intend to obey. The general's hand moved toward the control device. Kael moved first. His own claws drove into the back of his skull. Pain detonated through him. Not pain like punishment. Not pain like training. This was deeper, brighter, absolute. His nerves became fire. His vision flashed white. His knees nearly buckled, but he dug harder, feeling beneath scar tissue, beneath old surgical bone, beneath the place where the Empire had planted itself when he was still small enough to shape. Metal. He found it. Vorik shouted. The soldier holding the activation device lifted his thumb. Kael ripped. The chip tore free with flesh, nerve, and blood. A sound came out of him that was not a scream and not a roar, but something older than both. The control device flashed once, uselessly, as blood poured down his neck onto the ice. Vorik froze. For the first time in Kael's life, the general did not understand what he was seeing. Then he recovered. Activate all Panther chips. Technicians scrambled in the control vehicle. Buttons were pressed. Commands were sent. Nothing happened. Again. Nothing. A reptilian voice crackled over the communicator, thin with panic. General, no response. None of the units are responding. Vorik's head turned slowly toward the medical vehicle. Only one creature could have done that. Execute the doctor. Kael's heart stopped. Inside the control vehicle, Beaker stood among the technicians. A soldier turned toward her with a raised pistol. She did not run. She did not beg. She only looked through the window toward Kael. For 1 second, their eyes met. Then the shot cracked. Beaker fell. The only clean thing she had ever done cost her everything. Kael launched himself at Vorik. The soldiers reacted, but grief was faster than discipline. His claws caught the general at the throat and drove him backward across the ice. Rifles lifted all around them, but no one fired. Not with their commander trapped against Kael's body and one black claw buried beneath his jaw. Kael's blood dripped onto Vorik's armor. Open her cage, Kael growled. No one moved. He pressed deeper. A dark line of reptilian blood ran down Vorik's neck. Open it. Vorik's pride fought his survival for 3 long seconds. Survival won. Do it, he hissed. The soldiers around the transport lowered their weapons and unlocked the cage. The female stepped out. Free air touched her fur for the first time in years. Kael shoved Vorik away, turned, and ran to her. Gunfire began the moment the general hit the ice. Kill them! Vorik roared. Full fire! The world exploded. Kael reached the female as artillery awakened behind them. He swept her into his arms, ignoring the blood streaming down his spine, ignoring the failing strength in his legs, ignoring the burning hole where the chip had been. The wall was close. Too close to fail. The female gripped him. Kael! It was the first time she had said his name. He ran harder. Rounds struck the ice around them. Heat washed over his back. His muscles tore. His vision narrowed to white light, black fur, and the wall opening ahead. He crossed with her in his arms. The gunfire vanished. Cold disappeared. Silence swallowed them. Then warmth. Grass under his knees. Clean air in his lungs. A sky no cage had ever touched. Kael fell. The female caught him before he hit the ground, and beyond her shoulders, hundreds of panthers stood waiting in a vast green plain. Free. Alive. His pack. For one perfect moment, that was enough. The grass beyond the wall was warm beneath Kael's blood. For a few seconds, he could not understand it. Warmth had become something from dreams, something remembered from before cages, before Blackhold, before pain learned his name. He knelt in the high green plain with the female holding him upright, his own blood running down his back and soaking into soil that had never known reptilian boots. The air smelled alive. Not sterile. Not chemical. Not recycled through prison vents. Alive. Around him, hundreds of panthers stood in silence, their armor cracked with frost from the crossing, their eyes fixed on him. Rika was there. Saw was there. The sisters. The scouts. The cubs who had once slept against glass while a mother they could not touch purred them through nightmares. Now they were free. Kael tried to stand. His legs failed. The female caught him harder, pulling him against her chest. For the first time, there was no glass between them. No barrier. No speaker. No reflection pretending to be closeness. Her hands were real against his fur. Her breath was real beside his ear. "You crossed," she whispered. Kael tried to answer, but only blood came into his mouth. The pack moved forward. "Father," Rika said. The word broke something in the plain. One by one, the others repeated it. "Father. Father. Father." The sound moved through the warriors like grief learning how to speak. Then the ground trembled. Not from behind the wall. From ahead. Across the plain, shapes appeared in the tall grass. Thousands of them. Larger than panthers, leaner than war beasts, moving with the silent authority of creatures who had never been enslaved. Their fur carried gold, black, white, and storm-gray patterns. Their eyes shone with ancient judgment. Leopards. But not animals. Warriors. Guardians. Their leader stepped through the grass with a long curved blade in one hand and no fear in his face. He looked at Kael bleeding in the female's arms. Looked at the panthers. Looked at the Dominion armor still strapped to their bodies. The panthers tensed. The guardians surrounded them, but did not attack. The leader's gaze settled on the wound in Kael's skull, on the torn metal chips still clenched in his bloody fist. No invader wounded himself like that. No slave carried another slave through fire like that. No weapon cried for its children. The leopard leader understood without words. He raised his head and released a deep call that rolled across the plain like thunder under the earth. Thousands answered. It was not welcome. It was not forgiveness. It was war. Behind the wall, Vorik had finally understood what he had unleashed. The living ice shimmered, and through it came the first reptilian soldiers, confused, weapons raised, trying to force their way through the weakening barrier. They expected injured panthers. They expected scattered beasts. They expected survivors too broken to organize. They did not expect an ancient guardian empire waiting on the other side. The leopards moved first. They struck like the plain itself had grown claws. Reptilian rifles fired too late. Artillery could not aim. Heavy weapons became useless the moment the guardians reached close range. Panther and leopard lines merged by instinct, two feline peoples moving together without command, without rehearsal, without language. The reptilian army collapsed into terror. Kael watched through fading vision as his children fought beside free warriors. Rika dropped beneath a soldier's shield and opened his armor from below. Saw broke a reptilian captain against the ground. The sisters moved through enemy lines like twin blades. The scouts vanished into smoke and returned with throats marked in red. And then they found Vorik. The general tried to retreat behind his soldiers, screaming orders no one obeyed anymore. His empire had taught fear for generations, and now fear answered him by running away. Panthers dragged him from the ice toward the wall, toward the place where his power had failed. He saw Kael across the plain. For the first time, there was no command device in his hand. No chip. No hostage. No leash. Only fear. The pack surrounded him. They did not kill quickly. Not because they were cruel. Because some debts could not be paid in one blow. For every cub stolen. For every mother executed. For every child chained. For every body sent below to the altar. For Beaker, who had done one clean thing and paid with her life. For the female behind glass. For the father who had torn slavery out of his own skull. Vorik screamed until the wall took him. The living ice opened, seized him, and pulled him inward. His body shattered into white dust before his final command could leave his mouth. Then the battlefield went quiet. Kael heard none of it clearly anymore. The sounds came from far away, as if the world were closing a door between him and pain. The female held him tighter. Her tears fell into his fur, hot and silent. He lifted one trembling hand to her face. "Name," he whispered. She leaned closer. "My name is Araya." Kael smiled faintly. It hurt. But it was worth knowing. Around them, the panthers gathered. Warriors now. Children still. His children. Their mother stood above him, free at last, her body no longer divided from them by glass. "Take care of them," Kael whispered. Araya pressed her forehead to his. I will. His eyes moved across the pack one final time. Rika crying without shame. Saw kneeling with his head lowered. The sisters holding each other. Hundreds of warriors who had been raised to obey and had chosen to become family instead. Kael breathed once. The air tasted like grass. Like rain. Like freedom. Then he let go. No alarm sounded. No collar burned. No command called him back. Kael died on free soil, surrounded by the pack he had saved. Later, the Guardians would tell the story differently. They would say a chained panther crossed the wall carrying the last mother of his people. They would say he broke the Empire's leash with his own claws. They would say he gave his children freedom before he gave himself life. The Panthers told it simpler. They said their father had not been made by the Empire. He had been made by every life he refused to abandon. And when the young asked why the grass beyond the wall grew black in one small place, the elders would lower their heads and answer with pride. Because that was where a slave became free.